First of all, I've been a very blessed, very lucky man. I began this business years ago in Kentucky with the World Trade Center there, and to come to the very first trade center in the network in New Orleans, Louisiana, is the very first World Trade Center ever. A few folks realize that we began back in the 40s as the International House, and some great leadership then. Fast forward to where we are right now. So to be with an organization over 75 years old, and to be part of an organization that's going through transition and change, it's fun, it's exciting. There are challenges, obviously, but I love the state, love the city, I enjoy the people. Without question, gotta say that I love the food. That goes without saying here, obviously, but what I probably enjoy the greatest is that the challenge of change. That's the only constant we have, and this organization certainly is an example of what's happening, not just with the World Trade Center, but with a number of businesses. So being part of that change, continually thinking out of the box, having better folks around me, that includes both my board members, my team, people I work with in the city, in the States, through LED, through Gino Inc., other locations that have stepped up to me and said, look, how can we be a part of this and help you change? Because we're continually changing ourselves, and we're better together than independently. Challenges are, and this is cliche, and I realize that, but challenges are opportunities. My father was a Marine, and he taught me that a long time ago to take everything that came in my direction and run with it, but step back and look at it very carefully. I also had a great mentor, a couple of great mentors, beyond the fact my mother and my father, but a woman named Maria German Hampton, who later became in charge of the Federal Reserve in Kentucky. And she was my first teacher in business and in banking. That's where it began. But what Maria taught me was that when given a challenge or challenges, know when to step back and say, I'm qualified to do this, or I'm not qualified to do this. Who can I pull in to help make this happen? And that's hard to do, because you're taught to do, to be a be-all, end-all in business, in life, in many cases, being a parent. That's not the case in the real world. They're smarter people than you, people more, they're adept than you are to make, come up with solutions. So at an early age, I had to learn to do just that, to step out and say, I cannot do this alone. I need input, I need help, I need direction. And I still do that. And sometimes I find myself not doing it quick enough, because at my years of experience, I think, well, I've got experience, I can do this. Never the case. And I'm going to tell you, even at your point in your life, never be afraid to step out and say, this challenge is bigger than me, but it won't defeat me, because I have enough people or enough contact, enough confidence to say, we can make this happen together. The greatest leaders that I ever worked for, and I've been blessed, I worked with some wonderful people, and the one thing they told me that had to sink in over time was that you look at their roles and see how successful they are, and you think, how can I do that? How can I get there within so many years? How can I be that person? And they were servant leaders. And by that term, what I'm referring to is they made sure that I was growing in my position. And they would seldom take credit for successes. Of Brown Foreman, of the time when I met Maria, she was in the banking business, later at the Federal Reserve. But it was never about me or about that person. It was more about me, actually, in terms of, we did this. It was always about us, pretty much. And that servant leadership is something that I firmly believe in through all my dealings. The people I work with, and people that I'm lucky to have in my associates, I want them to grow. Because if they're not growing, the business is not going to grow. And if they're not growing and the business is not growing, they're going nowhere. But more importantly, their careers don't go as far as they should. And many a good person is probably left behind because that leadership person in front of them is more concerned about the person in the mirror versus the person next to them. The new normal is also our theme. for the World Trade Center. Every year we do a program, International Trade Week, and we hope with COVID-19 that we can still do this in November. It's the 2nd to the 5th, and our theme is Louisiana's New Normal, Ordinary to Extraordinary. And we took that twist because there's positive things happening here. There's all the negativity you read about in the paper and the news, but there's some really good things happening too. And I think the key thing that this organization has learned, that I'm learning, is the ability to be agile. And if you're not agile, or to use a term that a colleague of mine uses quite a bit, pivot, is the only way to really survive and transform into something different. Or if you don't survive. So for the World Trade Center, as you watch these businesses out there that are struggling, trying to reinvent themselves as we reinvent ourselves, we're being very agile, and we're also being very realistic of what we can and can't do. For example, everybody and their cousin and their grandparent are doing remote video presentations on training and the like. If everyone's doing that, either you have to be the very best at doing that, or you better decide you need to do something different that's just as valuable or more valuable to your businesses, to our clients. And we exist for our trade clients. So looking at what's happening in this marketplace with the new normal is everything's remote, that we're going to have a lot more competition. I love competition, but there comes a point of saturation. So what we'll still do and be heavily engaged in education and training, because that's, again, one of the things we do along with advocacy being our key driver, and then the idea of the trade advisory services. We're going to be examining how much education do we really get involved in, either remote by ourselves, or do we partner with other organizations and team up and make it that much stronger. So the word that I've used is the new normal's taught us that you have to be, must be, should be, gotta be agile. We just finished our strategic plan, and our strategic plan took us roughly 4 months to create with a committee and our board, got it approved at the last board meeting, and there's some key items there for the organization. Top on my list, from a business standpoint, is this, figuring out how to be, for any business, continue to be financially stable. And this board has been committed to the past work they've done, to the foundation, to give us a good, strong ship, but they want it stronger, as I do too. But along with that, trying to figure out where those buckets of opportunity exist for stability, financial stability. We want to really start driving home the advocacy piece, which never in the lifetime of this country has the international relationships we have with our trading partners, be it Canada, be it Mexico, be it the UK, be all the big players, including China, been more important. So that advocacy piece, where we advocate both in Washington, D.C. and in Baton Rouge for businesses here that need help with various trade issues, be it tariffs, be it questions on certain trade agreements, i.e. USMCA. Those businesses are being penalized for being in violation of certain import or export duties, what the case might be. Making sure we can be there on their behalf. We are the voice of trade, and that's one of our taglines for the World Trade Center, the voice of trade for Louisiana. And that voice refers to our voice in Washington, D.C., our voice throughout Louisiana, and the Gulf Coast region. So we cover those markets also. So top two things have to be, again, continually looking for growing this organization from a financial and a value standpoint to our clients, and to really get us engaged at a higher level in the level of advocacy. We've got a wonderful committee right now headed up by Eddie Hayes and by Ben Billings. And the new addition, getting Chris Kane, driving that effort. And it's exciting for us because we believe that's really where we can make a difference for our businesses by being that voice of business for Louisiana and our clients.